In the heart of the 90s, a record label emerged from the gritty streets of Los Angeles, forever changing the landscape of hip-hop. This is the story of Death Row Records, a tale of ambition, power, and the relentless pursuit of dominance. The story of Death Row Records begins with two pivotal figures: Dr. Dre, a groundbreaking producer from the iconic group NWA, and Suge Knight, a former college football player turned music executive. Together they would build a musical empire.
Dr. Dre's departure from NWA and Ruthless Records was a turning point. He was disillusioned with the financial and creative constraints he faced, which led him to seek out new opportunities.
In 1991, Dr. Dre and Suge Knight co-founded Death Row Records. Their vision was clear: to create a label that would give artists creative freedom and financial control.
The atmosphere at Ruthless Records was becoming increasingly toxic for Dre. He felt undervalued and constrained. Suge Knight saw this discontent as an opportunity to form a new venture where Dre could have the freedom he craved.
Suge Knight's business acumen and Dre's creative genius were a perfect match. They set out to recruit top talent and began working on their first major project. Death Row's first major release was Dr. Dre's solo debut, The Chronic. Released in 1992, it was a game-changer, blending funk samples with hard-hitting lyrics and introducing the world to a new sound.
The Chronic wasn't just an album, it was a cultural phenomenon. It redefined West Coast hip-hop and solidified Death Row's place in the industry.
The album also launched the career of Snoop Dogg, whose smooth delivery and charismatic presence captivated audiences. Death Row Records was on its way to becoming a powerhouse.
Working with Dre on The Chronic was a dream come true. We were creating something new, something fresh. The vibe in the studio was just incredible.
Snoop Dogg's contributions to The Chronic were undeniable. Tracks like Nothing But a G-Thang and Let Me Ride showcased the chemistry between Dre and Snoop, setting the stage for future collaborations.
The sessions for The Chronic were intense but incredibly productive. Dre knew exactly what he wanted, and Snoop brought this unique flair and charisma that perfectly complemented Dre's beats.
The success of The Chronic was unprecedented. It not only dominated the charts, but also influenced the sound and direction of hip-hop for years to come. With the success of The Chronic, Death Row Records quickly expanded its roster. Snoop Dogg's debut album Doggy Style in 1993 was another massive hit, further cementing the label's dominance.
There was an energy at Death Row that was unmatched. Suge Knight and Dr. Dre created an environment where artists felt like they could achieve anything.
Snoop Dogg's success was followed by a string of hits from other artists on the label, including Thaw Dogg Pound and Nate Dogg. Death Row was riding high, but the best was yet to come.
Being part of Death Row was like being part of a family. We pushed each other to be better, and the competition brought out the best in all of us.
The label fostered a sense of camaraderie and competition among its artists, driving them to produce some of the most influential music of the decade.
We were all hungry for success. The energy at Death Row was contagious, and it felt like we were on top of the world.
Death Row's artists dominated the charts, racked up gold and platinum records, and delivered unforgettable performances that resonated with fans across the globe. In 1995, Death Row made a move that would take the label to new heights, signing Tupac Shakur. At the time, Tupac was facing legal battles and personal turmoil, but Suge Knight saw an opportunity. Journalist Tupac's arrival at Death Row was a defining moment. He was a magnetic personality with a loyal fan base, and under Death Row, he was given the freedom to fully express his artistry. Producer Tupac's first album with Death Row, All Eyes on Me, was an instant classic. It featured hits like California Love and two of America's Most Wanted, showcasing Tupac's versatility, and the high-caliber production of Dr. Dre. Producer Tupac's work ethic was incredible. He brought an intensity to the studio that was unmatched, and his passion for his craft was evident in every track he recorded. Producer under Death Row, Tupac thrived creatively, collaborating with artists across the label and producing music that resonated deeply with fans. Collaborator working with Tupac at Death Row was an unforgettable experience. His energy, his drive, It pushed everyone around him to step up their game. Collaborator Tupac's success at Death Row was meteoric. His music, his message, and his persona captivated audiences, solidifying Death Row's status as a powerhouse in the music industry. By the mid-90s, Death Row Records was at its peak. The label's artists dominated the charts, sold millions of records, and became cultural icons. Insider. The success of Death Row wasn't just about the music. It was about the image, the attitude, and the way they captured the zeitgeist of the era. Death Row's success allowed its artists to live a life of luxury and excess. From lavish parties to high-profile feuds, the label was constantly in the spotlight. Publicist, the lifestyle was extravagant. We were throwing parties, driving fancy cars, and living in mansions. It was the epitome of success in the music industry. The label's meteoric rise brought unprecedented wealth and fame to its artists, but it also created a culture of excess and indulgence that would eventually contribute to its downfall. Security chief, with all the success came a lot of trouble. There were always people trying to take advantage, and the internal pressures and rivalries often boiled over. As the label's fortune grew, so did its internal strife. Personal rivalries, disputes over money, and Suge Knight's aggressive management style began to create cracks in the foundation. But behind the glitz and glamour, there was a darker side to Death Row. The label was plagued by violence, legal troubles, and infighting. Security guard. There was always tension at Death Row. Suge Knight's management style was ruthless, and the constant pressure often led to conflict. From Suge Knight's run-ins with the law to allegations of criminal activity within the label, the foundation of Death Row was starting to crack. Journalists, the label's aggressive persona, and Suge Knight's notorious reputation painted a target on their back. Every move they made was scrutinized by the media and law enforcement. Suge Knight's leadership style, while instrumental in the label's success, also fostered a culture of fear and intimidation. This atmosphere of constant tension took a toll on the artists and staff. Executive Suge Knight was both the strength and the weakness of Death Row. His forceful personality drove the label forward, but it also created an environment where fear and loyalty were often at odds. The relentless pressure and the internal conflicts began to erode the unity that had once been a hallmark of Death Row Records. The infamous East Coast-West Coast rivalry further escalated tensions. Tupac and the Notorious Big became embroiled in a feud that captured the nation's attention and added fuel to an already volatile situation. Historian, the rivalry was more than just music. It was about pride, territory, and respect. Unfortunately, it also led to a series of tragic events that would impact the entire industry. As the rivalry intensified, so did the scrutiny on Death Row. The label's aggressive persona and Suge Knight's notoriety painted a target on their back. Rapper, the East Coast-West Coast feud was blown out of proportion by the media, but it had real consequences. It created an environment where violence seemed inevitable. The media played a significant role in escalating the feud, often sensationalizing the conflict for headlines and ratings. This only served to heighten the animosity between the two coasts. The rivalry overshadowed the music. It became about who could outdo the other in terms of bravado and aggression, and it was only a matter of time before things turned deadly. The rivalry reached its peak with tragic consequences, leaving an indelible mark on the music industry and those involved. In September 1996, tragedy struck. Tupac Shakur was shot in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas and died 6 days later. His death sent shockwaves through the music world and marked the beginning of the end for Death Row Records. Eyewitness: the night Tupac was shot was surreal. It was a devastating blow to everyone at Death Row and the hip-hop community at large. Tupac's death was a monumental loss. It not only deprived the world of an iconic artist, but also destabilized Death Row Records. The label's decline had begun. Journalist Tupac's death was a turning point. Without his presence, Death Row lost a significant part of its identity and influence. It was a blow from which the label would never fully recover. The loss of Tupac was felt deeply by fans and artists alike. It marked the end of an era and signaled the beginning of tumultuous times for Death Row. Artist Tupac's death hit us hard. He was the heart of Death Row, and without him, things started to fall apart. With the loss of their star artist, Death Row struggled to maintain its momentum. Internal conflicts intensified, and the label's once unassailable dominance began to crumble. The rise of Death Row Records is a story of unparalleled success, ambition, and innovation. But as with all tales of meteoric ascent, it is also a story of excess, conflict, and inevitable decline.